Okay, it's 6 guys, we can start. So firstly, good evening. Yeah, I'm hoping everybody is having a good start to the week. So given that, as far as the last week is concerned, the last class what we did was a one shot revision on chapter 1, right? So I thought effectively, instead of doing like revisions in one session where we have to like hurry up and skip some parts of like skip some important parts, I thought we could do revision in like 2 or 3 parts, right, depending on the length of the chapter. So from now on, like whenever we're doing revisions, we'll only be doing like we'll not be doing it in one shot, but like 2-3 sessions in general, right? So we'll be following that. So as a part of that, today we'll actually be starting chapter 2, which is Kings, Farmers, and Towns, right? It's titled that. It's the second chapter in your part 1 book, right? So this is the first part of the video dealing with chapter 2 ka revision, right? So giving you a heads up, that's what we're going to discuss today, almost like 3 sub themes of it till the Magadhan Empire, sorry, till the Mauryan Empire, right? So cool. Good evening, everyone. Firstly, a couple of you are already here. Good to see you all back. We'll just give it a couple of another minutes for other people to join, but in the meantime, we can do our introductions, right? So cool. So as most of you all know, my name is Nikitha, and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel. I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th, and as far as my educational qualifications are concerned, I've recently graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's degree, a major in history and a minor in political science. So that's a little bit about me. So we'll quickly talk a little bit about Unacademy's plus and iconic features before going ahead into the actual topic. So as far as plus subscriptions are concerned, some of the benefits are you can actually sit at your own houses and listen to live classes taught by top educators of India. There's unlimited access to so many courses. Then there are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions. There'll be exhaustive coverage of syllabus. There's mentorship and guidance provided to you along with access to study materials, which are usually in the form of PDFs. And there are practice tests and live test series as well. So as far as the pricing is concerned for Unacademy Plus, the prices which you can see on the left side of the screen, like these ones, right? These are pre-discounted prices. But if you use the educator's code, which is TUM10, you'll basically be given a 10% discount and then you can get subscriptions for this much, right? The price is on the right side of the screen. So that's the difference by using the code. Quickly moving on to iconic, in the sense these are like much greater and special than plus. There's personal mentorship provided, number one. Then there are live thought solving sessions, weekly reports, parent connect, and also study planners provided. So that's about the iconic. And the pricing here is also on the left side are pre-discounted prices, on the right side are after the discount prices. It's the same code, which is TUM10. Yeah, so here we have different ranges of subscriptions, almost 9 different subscriptions, starting from almost 3 months to 2 years. So have a look at them and feel free to go ahead with whichever one you feel comfortable. Yeah. And also there's something called Bugs Bounty, which is an Academy special feature. Basically, it's an opportunity for you learners out there on the platform to report any sort of inappropriate content in the video. And you can also like claim your prize for reporting that particular issue. And the way you can actually report them is there's a link in the description below of this video. It's a description form, right? So click on that and then you'll be able to report any content which is not inappropriate, right? Okay, quickly moving to Emerge. This is another Unacademy's feature. These are weekly tests conducted. These are aligned with the latest CBSE guidelines per se. So these will really help you in preparing for your Term 1 boards. The link for that is again in the description below. Go check that out. It happens every week, right? Enroll yourselves and take part. Highly beneficial. Okay, that being said, I think it's time for quickly talking about chapter 2. But before that, a couple of y'all are here, like joined just now. So good evening everyone who just joined. Muskan's here. Hi Muskan. Kavya is also here. Hi Kavya. Uh, Aini is here. Hi Aini. Also like hello everyone who just joined. Guys, since this is a revision, I'll be going a little bit quicker, right? Because we've already dealt with this. We've had like a couple of quizzes on this chapter. So just because it's a revision, we'll be just going a little faster. But in case you all have any questions regarding any concepts, just stop me there, right? At least that particular topic we can discuss in detail. Yeah? So that's a heads up. So just follow that method. Just stop me whenever you'll have doubts. Anyways, so the last chapter we talked about was Indus Valley Civilization / Harappan Civilization, right? It ended almost around 1900, 1800 BCE, right? So almost for 1500 years after that, like after the decline of Harappan civilization, definitely there was something going on in the Indian subcontinent, right? There were people living, like survival of the people was there, but 12th standard history textbook does not cover that. Usually there was like Rig Vedic period, like later Vedic period and all, but we do not cover all of that. Yeah, but just for your reference, I'm telling that within that period, after that what happens is the main gist of the second chapter, right? So exactly, right? Like so many developments were happening in those 1500 years timeline as well. And one of the major development that was happening is the composition of the Rig Veda, right? So what is Rig Veda again? We all know that as an Indian subcontinent, we have like 4 different Vedas: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda and Atharvana Veda, right? Out of these 4 Vedas, Rig Veda is very, very popular and important. So that Veda was composed in these 1500 years timeline, right? So who was it composed by? Again, we don't know a specific author. In fact, it can be different authors, right? Not more than one person. So we don't know who they are, but we know for a fact that these people, whoever were composing Rig Veda, were living in and around the Indus and its tributaries, right? Basically in the northern and northwestern India. Yeah, Jhelum, Chena, Bravi, Bias, all these are tributaries of Indus. So people were living in and around these rivers who were composing Rig Veda. Yes, so that's Rig Veda composition. And then nextly, another development which was happening is agricultural settlements were taking place. Yeah, usually in the Harappan civilization, we did have agricultural settlements, right? Agriculture was very, very widely popular, but not among all the people. Like every individual did not practice agriculture. But here, when we come to this timeline, so many people are involving themselves in agricultural practices, right? So the obvious consequence of practicing agriculture is you have to settle down in a particular area. You can't move around here and there because you have to look after a crop for at least like 6-7 months. Yes, so permanent settlements are taking place, like agricultural settlements are taking place, not just in the northern part, but even in the Deccan Plateau and also part of southern India, especially Karnataka, right? So agricultural settlements have been happening in all of these places. And besides that, there are also pastoral populations, right? People who survive on feeding their animals of grasslands. So that's pastoral populations. That is also happening in Deccan and even further south, which is Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Yeah. And lastly, we also have new modes of disposal of the dead, right? So again, what is this? Initially in the Harappan civilization, when there were dead people, they were basically buried in the ground, like the soil was dug and then their body was kept in the ground, burials, right? That is also happening in these 1500 years. But other than that, something else is also developing, right? Which is megaliths. Megaliths are nothing but like huge rocks which are installed in that particular place where the dead body is buried, right? So that has been happening. They are happening in central and south India right from first millennium BCE, right from when the Vedic period started. Yeah, so these are a couple of developments that were happening. Not just that, there was something else as well, but we'll study all of them like in narration to what was happening in the um, fourth, fifth, sixth BCE, right? So whenever these dead people were being buried in the burials, yeah, along with the dead body, there were also other tools or weapons that were kept in the burial, right? So what does it signify again? We've studied that usually people believed in life after death. They believed that there was something called an afterlife, or like next janma, if you would like to call that. Yeah. So in that case, just for their convenience or just because they believe in life after death, they put all these tools and weapons and sometimes even pottery, jewelry inside the burial, right? So that was happening in the 1500 years, right, as soon as the Harappan civilization declined. Now after these 1500 years, we'll quickly jump to what was happening in the 6th century BCE, right? So this landmark is very, very important for us because this chapter starts from 6th century BCE, right? So from 6th century BCE, there is definitely evidence available to us, like for the historians and archaeologists, that so many developments, so many trends have been happening from 6th century BCE, right? So we'll just have a look at what some of these trends or developments are. Number one, there's definitely like clear evidence that the political structures, or like the political units such as states, empires, kingdoms, whatever you want to call them, right? All of these political entities, they have been clearly been coming up right from the 6th century BCE, right? This is exactly where the Mahajanapadas come into picture. Yeah, so just hold on to that Mahajanapadas point. We'll discuss them in detail in the next slides. Yeah, so for now, just remember that states, empires, or other kinds of political entities, they have been coming up in the 6th century BC. Yeah, so underlying these political processes were other changes as well. It's not just the political sphere which was developing, but something else was also accompanying this development of political sphere. What is that exactly? There are so many, but number one out of all of them is agricultural production, right? Agriculture was there, no doubt, before the 6th century BC as well. Agriculture was clearly there, but agricultural production was becoming organized from 6th century BC. Yes, so political changes, agricultural changes, all of them were happening at the same time from 6th century BC. So number one, that, and number two, so many towns and cities, like urban way of life, have started emerging, not just in the northern part of the India, but also throughout the subcontinent, right? Like south, east, west, everywhere, like every region of the Indian subcontinent, towns and cities have been emerging. That's another development. So in order to like read about all this stuff, like to get details about whatever the changes are happening, we obviously need some sources, right? Those sources can either be archaeological or textual. So historians, archaeologists, they've did like decades and decades of research, drawing upon so many sources like inscriptions, texts, coins, some sort of visual materials or writings, right? All of these are different sources available to the historians. They have been reading them in so much detail, and finally they produced some information about this period. Yes, but that being said, we do not know the entire story. Yeah, there are sources available, but not for everything. So we do not know answers or information relating to some parts of this period. So that's why it is this is not the entire story, and in fact it is a complex process for historians to reconstruct this history. Yeah, so that's a little introduction for this chapter. Now we'll delve into the details of each particular sub-theme. Yes, but any questions guys still here, please let me know in the chat box, because this chapter is really important. Yes, this kind of lays the basic framework for the other chapters. That's why I'm stressing a lot on this. So in case any questions, just please ask me in the chat box. In case you all don't have any, then we can go ahead. Okay, I don't think there are any. Chalo, we'll move ahead. So the first sub-theme as a part of this chapter is titled as Princip and P-1 in your textbook, right? So again, like Princip, P-1, we look at who all these figures are. But before that, you need to understand what epigraphy is, right? So it's again a technical term, but what exactly is epigraphy? It's simply the study of inscriptions. Yes, so blindly remember, epigraphy is always linked to inscriptions. It's the study of inscriptions, right? So within India, like within Indian epigraphy, some of the remarkable developments or most momentous developments have taken place in the 1830s. Before that also, like some inscriptions were studied, but not too successful in studying them. But once in 1830, yeah, 1830s, 1840s, there was so much development happening in the Indian epigraphy, and all of this credit can be given to one person, who is James Princip. Yeah, so that's why we have the title as Princip. Princip is nothing but James Princip, who basically discovered the Brahmi and Kharoshthi scripts. Just hold on. We'll look at what scripts, languages, and all of these different technical terms are. But Brahmi and Kharoshthi are two very important scripts in India in the ancient times, right? And they have been deciphered by James Princip in 1830s. Yes, so that's another important point. But again, who was James Princip, right? As the name suggests, he's definitely not an Indian. So he is an Englishman. He is a part of the EEIC, English East India Company. And as a part of the company, he entered India. He was an officer in the mint department. Like, what is mint department again? Mint department is nothing but like minting of coins and other forms of currency, right? You mint coins, you mint currency. So just like how RBI is responsible for making currency in present day in 21st century India, back in those times, there were different organizations which were controlled by the British in order to mint currency in India, right? So James Princip is an officer in the mint department of East India Company. Yes, and yes, he definitely did discover Brahmi and Kharoshthi scripts, two scripts which were widely used in ancient Indian inscriptions and also coins. Yeah, so that's Princip. Any questions guys still here? Because Princip and P-1 are two very important concepts. So any questions, please just let me know. Prajwal just joined us. Hi Prajwal, good evening. Smitha is also back. Hi Smitha. Good evening Smitha. Okay, so if there are no questions, then we can go ahead. Cool, so that's about Princip guys. So nextly we'll be talking about like who P-1 is. Like, is P-1 the name of a person or it's a title of the person, right? So to look at who P-1 is, it's actually, I would say, a title of a king, right? No surprise, it's the title of the famous king Ashoka, right? So in the old inscriptions and all in ancient India, whenever like there is some important information about Ashoka, his specific name was not mentioned, right? Instead, he was referred to as Piyadasi in all of the inscriptions, right? So Piyadasi is again a Prakrit term, and if you translate it into like English, roughly you will get this translation, right? It's pleasant to behold, something like a very kind gesture. Yeah, so that term was used by people who were inscribing all of these inscriptions, right? But how do we know that Piyadasi is Ashoka? Because we are trying to compare these inscriptions with other Buddhist texts which were from that period. Yeah, so by comparing and contrasting two different varieties of sources, we came to a conclusion that Piyadasi is nobody but Ashoka, one of the greatest kings that ancient India has ever seen. Yeah, so that's Piyadasi slash Ashoka. Okay. Kavya says no questions. Thanks, Kavya, for responding. Ravi Raj is back. Hi, Ravi Raj. Good evening. Okay, so I'll quickly go ahead because I think we have a lot to cover. Cool. So James Princip's contribution was so heavy that just by discovering the Brahmi and Kharoshthi scripts, you could read almost like 80% of inscriptions which were in India, because almost all the inscriptions of that time were written in Brahmi and Kharoshthi, right? All credits and thanks to James Princip. So obviously, like, what happened now? It's deciphered. So definitely investigations, like more and more investigations can happen, and once you start reading them, once you start documenting all of that, there's something very solid or concrete known as the Indian political history, right? Till then we do not know anything about Indian history, but in the 1830s, 1840s, there is something we got to know as Indian political history, that there were so many great empires back in those times, different kinds of administrations, different kinds of economies and societies. So all of this was known because James Princip has deciphered Brahmi and Kharoshthi scripts. Yes? So obviously, like, investigations into new Indian political history, as I was mentioning, as European and Indian scholars used inscriptions and text composed in a variety of languages. Yeah, and they used all of this to reconstruct histories of different dynasties that ruled over the Indian subcontinent. Yeah, so now in our hands, in front of us, we have something called as the political history of ancient India, right? So political history, like, people have studied, like historians have studied to a great extent, but they just didn't stop there. They wanted to know something beyond the political sphere, right? So what did they do? They started investigating further and further and further, and they started linking these political developments or political histories to some other field. So what are these fields again? These are economic, social and cultural fields, right? So just remember, if you're talking about any particular kingdom, like be it any kingdom in Indian history and world history, there are four elements which you need to remember, right? The first is political sphere, the second is economic sphere, the third is social sphere or society, and finally it is cultural sphere, right? So political sphere is already known to historians. Using that, they tried to get information about the economic, social and cultural spheres, right? So that investigation was also happening. And yes, indeed, they were successful in connecting all of these spheres, but it is not always simple and direct, right? It involves a lot of effort. It is such a complicated, indirect process. Yeah. So that's the link between all of these four sectors or four spheres. Okay, so we'll quickly move on to the next sub-theme, which is titled as the earliest states, right? Like, what are the first initial states that have emerged in the Indian subcontinent? And the first theme we'll be discussing under that is the 16 Mahajanapadas, right? The word I've already mentioned in the previous slide. So what are, Mahajanapadas again? These are nothing but like initial empires or initial kingdoms which emerged in the Indian subcontinent, and they were 16 in number throughout the country, right? There were 16 different kingdoms. Okay, so we'll look at the details of it. So generally, like the 6th century BCE in India is often regarded as a major turning point in the early Indian history, right? Why is that? Why does a particular century has to be designated or referred to as a major turning point? Because there were rapid and so many developments happening at the same time in that period. Yes. So what are they? Just to look at a few of those, because 6th century BCE is associated with early states. Yeah, because all of these Mahajanapadas have started coming up. There were so many cities that started emerging, right? And then the growing use of iron was also there. Like if you want to make any weapons or tools, iron was extensively used. And lastly, there was development of coinage. Initially there was barter system, but now barter system slowly started decreasing its importance, and in place of that this currency or standard coinage came into place. Yes, so all of these developments were happening in the 6th century BCE, right? So other than that, it also witnessed the growth of diverse systems of thoughts. For example, Buddhism and Jainism, right? Two very important religions where we'll be talking about them in detail in the 4th chapter, right? So, but as most of y'all can recollect what Buddhism and Jainism are, all of these philosophies started emerging and consolidating themselves in the 6th century BCE, right? And these Buddhist and Jainist texts like three Pitakas and all of those textual sources, they do mention a lot about all of these 16 Mahajanapadas, right? Be it the names of the kings, be it how the administration was happening, like different information, they were mentioned as a part of these Buddhist and Jaina texts about these 16 Mahajanapadas. So there are a few to name these 16. The one is Vajji, then there is Magadha, Koshala, Kuru, Panchala, Gandhara, Avanti. These are all different names of these 16 Mahajanapadas, but these are not it. We have all the 16 names available to us, but it's not important. So like let's not go there. Yeah. So that's the basic introduction to 16 Mahajanapadas. We'll be talking about them in detail and especially about Magadha, right? So guys, but like any questions in the meanwhile, just put them in the chat box. Okay, where are we here? Right. So most of these Mahajanapadas, like out of all the 16, definitely they had some kind of authority, like political authority. Most of them were ruled by kings, like normally the kings which we know. There's one person who is the head of the kingdom. He has all the power, right? But out of the 16, there are some Mahajanapadas which are known as Ghanas or Sanghas. The name is different here. See, these are called as Ghanas or Sanghas. The spellings are here, guys. So these were basically not kingdoms, but instead they were oligarchies. What are oligarchies? If you're a political science student, you will know what oligarchies are. But like in brief sense, oligarchies is a type of political regime where a group of people hold the power. It's not just one person who has all the power like the king, but these are a group of people, like I don't know, like 10 people, 15 people. We don't know the number, but like definitely not 1%. Yeah. So all of these group of people shared the power and they are called as the Rajas. Yes. So Rajas basically ruled over all these Ganas and Sanghas. So Mahavira and Buddha, founders of Jainism and Buddhism respectively, they are also prince belonging to these important Ganas and Sanghas. Right? So in some instances, as in the case of Vajji Sangha, for example, right, The Rajas probably controlled resources such as land collectively. So there's no one individual power, right? That's what I mean. There's always collective power. Even this land was controlled collectively by the Rajas, right? So some of these sanghas and ganas, even though they're very popular, even though they are very effective and had like good administrations, but we unfortunately we do not have written histories or like any sort of sources available, right? There are lack of sources, and that is why it is very difficult for us to reconstruct histories of these ganas and sanghas. Some of them did not have any sources. Yes, so we don't know about them in greater detail. But that doesn't mean they are not effective. They are very, very effective. Right? They even had all of these capital cities, like which was the most important city in the kingdom. And all of these capital cities were often fortified. Right? Fortification is nothing but building a huge wall around the whole of the city. Yes, just like how we have walls around our houses, so that it's difficult for the outsiders to come in without the permission. Just like that, the whole of the city had a huge wall, like which is very tall, running around the whole city. Yeah, so just imagine how big the structure was. That's fortification. And obviously it's very, very important to maintain these fortified cities, and for that they needed armies and bureaucracy. Yeah, to maintain armies and bureaucracy one needed a lot of resources, right? So again it's very, very important to have all these resources. In terms of money, let's say, like very crudely putting, they definitely needed money to maintain armies and bureaucracy, and also to build all these fortified cities, because they have to pay salaries, like king has to pay salaries, right? That's why a lot of resources were needed. And from 6th century BC, again in the same period, what was happening is these brahmans, who were the top people in the fourfold varna system which we have in India, right? So these brahmans, they started composing different Sanskrit texts which are known as dharma sutras, right? Dharma sutras, dharma shastras, these are all different names for the texts composed by brahmins, but ideally the content of all of these books will be one and the same. Yeah, basically dealing with some of the rules or regulations slash norms for rulers to follow, right? Like these Kshatriya people or sometimes even Vaishya people, how they have to live in a society, or how they are supposed to govern the kingdom, like what should they eat, how should they sleep. So all of these different rules, right? They are the content which comprise the Dharma Shastras and Dharma Sutras. Yeah. So it's also mentioned that as a ruler or as a Kshatriya king, they are supposed to collect taxes from cultivators, traders, and artisans, because that is the only source of income for the state, and only then state will have these resources to build fortifications and maintain armies, right? So that's why it was very important to collect taxes from these different groups of people. Okay, so cultivators, traders, and artisans were paying, but what about pastoralists and forest people? Right? So when it comes to pastoralists and forest people, they are not that rich, right? Like when compared to other people in the society, they are not that rich. So we don't really know whether they had the money to pay the tax, yeah, or they were exempted from being taxed. We don't know about that. That's why I was saying that we do not have an entire complete picture, right? So that's that. But one thing which we definitely know is this going on raids on neighboring states, right? Like just going to your neighboring state, looting them, killing those people, waging a war against them, and illegally taking away all their money, and all of this like illegal stuff, like unethical stuff, that was quite acceptable as a legitimate means of acquiring wealth, because at the end of the day, kings needed resources, kings needed money. How will they get the money if taxes are not sufficient? The only way is to raid on neighboring states, even though it is morally wrong. Yeah, they did that and it was acceptable. So now they have resources by looting other kingdoms. They have enough money to maintain all these bureaucracies and standing armies, right? They have been doing well, but this is only the story of few of the Mahajanapadas, right? Other Mahajanapadas or other Sanghas and all, they still relied on militia, right? So what is militia? So again, like, in order to understand what militia is, we need to understand first what standing armies are. Yeah, standing armies are nothing but like professional soldiers under the direct disposition of the king or the ruler, right? Whenever the king is going to the war, he will just tell his army or tell his standing army to prepare for the war and they'll fight, right? These are professional soldiers. They are given training, they're giving like regular salaries and all. But on the other side, what is militia, right? Militia are temporary soldiers. They are not permanent. So again, like, what do they do if they are not involved in the war? Let's say for a year, 3 months war is happening, and what will they do for the next rest of the 9 months, right? So these are basically peasants, right? So in those 9 months, they started, like, they do their regular agricultural work, they turn into peasants, right? So but whenever there is a need for soldiers, whenever there is war happening, king will call this militia to come and serve in the army. Yes, these are not professional people basically. So that's what happening in the few of the Mahajanapadas, right? Some had standing armies, but some did not, and instead they had militia. So that's about Mahajanapada, guys. But any questions till here, please put them down. Yeah, exactly, Raviraj, you're absolutely right. From peasants, right? So, like, even in your 11th standard, like, just go back a year before, you've talked about all of these feudal structures and all, right? So, even in the feudal structure, what do? They are peasants, but when there is time for war and all, they used to serve as soldiers also. The exact thing was happening in all of these 16 Mahajanapadas as well. Yeah? So, that's right, Raviraj. Anyways, so that's like about all the 16 Mahajanapadas in general. But out of these 16, there is one very, very important Mahajanapada, which is known as Magadha, right? So why Magadha is so important, right? Like, why is it so popular? Why did it become so big, right? What is so special about Magadha? We'll look at Magadha in detail, right? So between the 6th and 4th centuries BCE, yeah, like the time period we are basically talking about right now, this particular Magadha empire, which is in present day Bihar, right, it has emerged as one of the most popular and powerful Mahajanapadas, right? And there has to be a reason. Yeah, there has to be some kind of explanation behind why did it become so powerful. So historians have several different explanations to it, right? So number one is Magadha was a region where agriculture was especially productive. Look at how so many sources are interlinked here. So what happens when agriculture is productive, right? What is the link between more agriculture and the kingdom becoming powerful? It's because if there is so much of agricultural productivity happening, yeah, so many taxes can be collected by the king, right? So obviously when the taxes are being collected, they can maintain huge armies because they have enough money to pay all the soldiers, right? And definitely if there is huge army, when they go to a war to the neighboring state or neighboring kingdom, they can easily defeat them, and therefore they can expand their territories and expand their boundaries, right? So just see how everything is overlinked here. Yeah, agricultural revenue from agricultural productivity, that money is used to maintain the armies, If there are huge armies, they can win the war and expand their territories, and that's how you become a powerful Mahajanapada. Right? So that's the link. Okay, Amresh has a question. Tell details about powerful. What exactly, Amresh, is your question? Are you asking? Are you basically asking like talk about Magadha in detail, or could you please complete your question, Amresh? I didn't quite get it. Just put it down. I'll definitely answer that, but I'll go ahead in the meanwhile. Um, okay, so one reason for Magadha becoming so powerful was agricultural productivity. Number two, it's the presence of iron mines, right? Jharkhand, it was also a part of Magadhan Empire, present day Jharkhand. It had a lot of iron mines, right? So if you have iron there, you have the raw material to produce all these tools and weapons, right? Again, tools and weapons, if you have, you can easily win in the war. So that's the relation again, iron mines availability. And then there are elephants also available in the forest regions, right? In Bihar, West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and all. There are so many forests, and in those forests there are so many elephants available. Elephants are again very, very important sources because they are the strongest wing of the army, right? Like 100 soldiers are not even equal to like one elephant, right? So that's how elephants are very, very powerful and constitute an important component of the army, right? And lastly, because the Ganga river is flowing there, Ganga tributaries are flowing there in this Magadha region, and it provided like cheap and convenient communication, right? Like people can travel in the boats from one place to another, or goods can be imported and exported via these river channels, right? So these are some of the reasons why Magadha became very, very powerful. Yeah. Okay. So okay, cool. Got your question, Amresh. Thanks for just putting that up again. So yeah, like just to answer your question, Amresh, the point we're discussing here is why did Magadha become powerful? Yeah, it is also one of the 16. Why not other 15? But why only Magadha became powerful? Right? Powerful can be anything, right? Like powerful can be they have effective armies, or they have good bureaucracies, or the administration was being carried out very, very effectively, or people are looked after very, very well, like there are welfare schemes and all, or the empire has been expanding like very well. Yeah, like this mere powerful word can be attributed to so many different components in the kingdom, right? And the reasons are, number one, agricultural productivity, number two, presence of iron mines, then there are elephants available, then there are river channels like Ganga and its tributaries available. Because of all of these factors, Magadha became very, very powerful, right? I hope that answers your question, Amresh, but in case it doesn't, just let me know. I'll try to explain it in detail. Yeah. Okay. Manjusha is here. Hi, Manjusha. Elephants were used as vehicles. Absolutely right, Manjusha. Like, you're right. Like, like even if you look at any sort of movies or like some documentaries, even today, when you're looking at some kind of war, people usually sit on the elephants and it is used as some sort of vehicle as well. The person sitting on the elephant usually guides the elephant, right? Like to go in this direction or to go in that direction. And let's just imagine like elephant is moving. Just by looking at the elephant, the opposite armies are threatened. Like there's so much of fear within them. Like what if elephant stamps them? Like spot dead, right? That is why elephants are very, very powerful again. Absolutely right, Manjusha. Okay, Amresh, your point is clear. Good to know that. Cool. So, however, these Buddha and Jaina writers, like whatever they wrote about Magadha in their, like whatever was written about Magadha in these Buddha and Jaina books, they had another theory as to why Magadha became very, very powerful, right? They say that it's not because of all these natural factors like availability of iron mines or availability of rivers or for elephants and all. These are natural factors. You did not do anything about it. But these Buddhist and Jaina writers, they often attribute to the powerful Magadha to the policies of the individual rulers who ruled over Magadha. Right? He says that these texts say that the rulers are very, very powerful. Like whoever ruled over Magadha, they are very powerful. They are ruthlessly ambitious. Yeah, they have so much will and determination inside them to expand their boundaries. And he also names a couple of the kings, right? Number one, it's Bimbisara. Then there's Ajatashatru. Then there's Mahapadmananda, right? These are all the important and powerful kings who ruled over Magadha, right? They're very, very powerful, and that is why the kingdom became powerful, is the theory supported by the Buddha and Jaina texts. Yeah? But like whatever the theory is, it's powerful at the end of the day. Yeah? So that happened. Okay, Manjusha has something to add. Fertile land, forest, communication systems, iron. Yes, that's a great summing up of all the theories, Manjusha. Thanks for that. That's right. Okay, so Magadha, right? Like obviously there'll definitely be a capital for Magadha. So initially the capital for Magadha is Rajagaha. Yeah, it's also known as Rajgir. It's in Bihar again. It's the capital of Magadha initially, right? And this Rajagaha was also a fortified settlement, as many other cities are during the ancient India, right? It's often located amongst the hills, surrounded by hilly regions, right? But later what happened in the 4th century BCE, like after 2 centuries, what happened is Rajagaha was no more the capital, like Rajgir was not the capital anymore, but the capital was shifted to Pataliputra. Again, what is Pataliputra? The present day Patna, the capital of present day Bihar, in those days was called as Pataliputra, right? It has become the capital of Magadha, right? So the capital shifting happened in the 4th century BCE. Cool. So nextly, we look at an early empire, so that's Magadha, guys. Like we've talked about 16 Mahajanapadas. We've talked about Magadha in particular because Magadha is very, very powerful out of those 16, right? That's the end of the Mahajanapadas. Now we look at the one great empire which Indian subcontinent has seen, like the first empire of its kind, right? Which emerged as soon as the Magadhans saw a downfall. So which empire was it? None other than the Mauryans, right? It is one of the first empires in India. So obviously, like as soon as the Magadhan empire fell, Mauryans came up, right? The founder of Mauryan empire, as all of us know, is Chandragupta Maurya. He founded it in the year 321 BCE, right? His control almost extended as far in the northwest to Afghanistan and Balochistan. Just imagine a political map in your head. Just locate where Afghanistan and Balochistan are, right? Somewhere in the northwestern frontiers, like beyond Pakistan, right? So from there, the whole of North India and almost the central part of India was also under the control of Chandragupta Maurya. That's how big his territory was. Yeah? And he ruled for some time. After his death, his son took over. Yeah? Who is called as Bimbisara. Right? Sorry, Bindusara. So after Bindusara, his son took over, who is Ashoka, our main figure. Yeah? So basically Ashoka is the grandson of Chandragupta Maurya. He is undoubtedly another very important famous ruler of ancient India, right? And why do we know him? Because he is very, very famous for conquering Kalinga, right? Kalinga is in present day coastal Orissa, right? So he conquered Kalinga, which means that his empire now extended from the east of India to the northwestern frontiers of India. Huge territory. Yes? So that's a brief intro to what Mauryan Empire is. Yeah. But just going into the details of Mauryan Empire, before that, let me just say what languages and scripts are used in Mauryan Empire. Right? Most of these Ashokan inscriptions, whatever, like issued by the king himself, they were written in Prakrit language because all of the people don't know Sanskrit, right? The common people language was Prakrit, and that is why so many inscriptions were issued in Prakrit language. But in the northwestern part of the subcontinent, especially in Balochistan and Afghanistan, right, these inscriptions were in Aramaic and Greek because local people there spoke Aramaic and Greek. Right? So according to the convenience of the people, according to what languages the local people know, in that language only inscriptions were issued. Right? So these Prakrit inscriptions, right, like most of them were written in the Brahmi script. There's a lot of difference between language and script, right? The inscriptions were written in Prakrit language, but the script used was Brahmi script, right? So you can write Prakrit in Brahmi script, but you can't write Greek and Aramaic in Brahmi, right? So in that case, the Greek and Aramaic were written in the Kharoshthi script in northwestern India. Yeah. So Aramaic and Greek scripts were mainly used in Afghanistan, as I was telling you. Yeah. So that's languages and scripts. Manjusha has something to say. Ashoka was the last ruler of Mauryan Empire. Yes, I would fairly say that, Manjusha. I mean, last powerful ruler of Mauryan Empire. Yeah, he was not the last ruler of Mauryan Empire, but he was the last powerful ruler. After that also, like his son, his grandson, they are also Mauryans. They also ruled over all of these places, right? But they're not that powerful. Yeah, then that is why exactly the last king of Mauryan Empire by name Brihadrata got defeated by his own minister, yeah, Pushyamitra Sangha, right? So Pushyamitra Sangha was the minister of the last Mauryan ruler, who is Brihadrata, right? And he basically defeated Brihadrata. So yeah, I'm hoping you got the difference, Manjusha. Ashoka was the last powerful ruler, but not the last ruler of Mauryan Empire. Okay, so finding out about the Mauryans, right? Like, how do we know about Mauryans? How many sources do we have? Yeah. Okay, so historians definitely they have used a variety of sources, be it archaeological, be it textual, to reconstruct the history of Mauryan Empire, just like they do with any other empire, right? Uh, Out of all of these sources available, the one most important work which gave us a lot of information is the account of Megasthenes, right? So who is Megasthenes? He's not an Indian for sure. In fact, he was a Greek ambassador who visited the court of Chandragupta Maurya in the starting of the establishment of the empire, right? So he came as a ambassador, right? So when he came, he actually was there in India for a couple of years, almost 2-3 years. Then he started writing down everything, what is happening, in one of his famous books called as Indica, right? So if you look at Megasthenes' work titled Indica, we'll get to know a lot of information about the Mauryan Empire. And another source, another important source is Arthashastra, right? Arthashastra is written by an Indian himself whose name is Kautilya or Chanakya. He is also known as Vishnugupta, right? All of these are different names for Kautilya, right? He composed another book called as Ardhashastra. He was an Indian only. He was, in fact, the minister of Chandragupta Maurya. Yeah. So he himself wrote that book called as Arthashastra, very, very important source. So, but besides these two major sources, Indica and Arthashastra, Mauryans and Mauryans' way of living are also mentioned in some Buddhist, Jaina, and Puranic literature, as well as Sanskrit literary works. Yeah, like range of sources available basically. So that's one way where you find about Mauryans. Okay, so that's sorry. So that's sources, right? Like those are written sources. But on the other side, we also have archaeological sources, right? So what are these some archaeological sources available? Number one, these are inscriptions, right? And to be very, very honest, Ashoka is one such ruler in ancient India who issued so many inscriptions, right? Not just one, not just two, but he had almost, I don't remember the exact numbers, but he had different kinds of inscriptions like major rock inscriptions, minor rock edicts, pillar inscriptions, and not just one or two, like 20, 25 inscriptions like that, right? And installed all over the Indian subcontinent, right? So these inscriptions again are very, very important sources which give us a lot of information about Mauryan Empire. Yeah. So what is the content of these inscriptions, right? Like what was written? They have been inscribed in so many places, but like what is written on the inscriptions? So these again are some of the moral values or ethical values which Ashoka used to call as Dhamma, right? Dhamma principles. He believed in them so well. Like he basically followed these Dhamma principles all his life, especially after conquering Kalinga, right? So what do these include, right? Like basic moral etiquettes and values, which even like our parents tell us a lot of times, or like how society dictates you to live, right? Like for example, respect your elders. Very general, but it's a moral statement. It's like some of the moral principles you're supposed to follow as a part of the Dhamma principles, right? So yeah, these basically included like respecting your elders, generosity towards brahmans, and also like other servants and slaves, like treat them properly. Yeah, don't look down upon them. They are also humans, so look at them like with kindly, right? And not just your religion, but also respect other people's religion as much as your own, right? So these are a couple of what do you say, like principles which are a part of Dhamma principles mentioned by Ashoka and who basically spread the message in different parts of India, right? So that's Dhamma. We'll quickly like look at administering the empire as well. I know like we're kind of nearing the time limit. It's almost 7, but like just give me like 5-10 minutes. Yeah, I'll wind this up. So administering the empire, right? Like how effective was the administration and all that stuff. So there was definitely a center, right? Like center, as we've discussed, is Pataliputra, like capital, right? Apart from the main capital, there were also other political centers which were very, very important. Yeah, they had a particular name. They're called as provincial centers, right? There are 4 and they are very strategic in location because one of them is in the north, one is in the south, one is in the east, and the other one is in the west. Yeah, so like in every possible direction of their empire, Ashoka has established these political centers for obviously, and there's some sort of strategy or tactic behind what do you say, like establishing these political centers. Yeah. So just to name them, the first is Taxila in the north, right? Ujjaini in the west, Tosali in the east and Suvarnagiri in the south. The names are here, guys. Yeah, all of those names are mentioned as a part of the Ashoka inscriptions, right? So again, like, how did the administration happen? So if we examine the content of these inscriptions, yeah, we find virtually the same message engraved everywhere. The same message, right? Like, even if the inscription is in Andhra Pradesh or even if it's in Pakistan or anywhere, the message is the same. The message is respect your elders or treat other religions respectfully. Like, these common principles, the message is the same, right? So because the message is the same, can we say that the whole of the empire, which is very, very huge and large, did it have a uniform administrative system? I don't know, like, we might not. We don't have, again, answers to this. Yeah, but historians have slightly, like, leaned on to suggest that no, that's not the case. Yeah, it is not possible for such a large empire to have a uniform administrative system, right? Sometimes there are differences locally or regionally, right? Because the region is very, very diverse. Yeah, so that's what the historians say, but again, it's just speculations. We do not have definite answers, right? So, like, they basically give out all these, like, interesting points that imagine, like, the coast of Orissa, right? Like, it's a coastal land, but at the same time, imagine the hilly regions of Afghanistan. How is it possible that these two places, which are so different, yeah, one is a coast, one is a hilly region, do you think they'll have the same administration? Logical question again, like, we don't know, but you can come up with your own explanations, right? So historians also suggest that within the capital itself, yeah, within Pataliputra, the administrative control was stronger, right? But as you moved away from the center, the control started becoming weaker and weaker. That's one theory proposed by historians, right? So, okay, before going further, Manjusha has a question. Tosali, so in the terms of direction, if you're asking, Manjusha, so Tosali is basically towards the east. Yeah, Tosali to the east and Ujjain to the west. Okay, so as you moved away from the center, there was not much control. And also, like, whatever these four places, the Suvarnagiri or Ujjain or Taxila or Tosali for that matter, I've told you that these are very strategically located, right? There has to be some importance of these places. Otherwise, why would they become so important, right? So it is because long distance trade was very, very easy through these four different places, right? Especially when it comes to Taxila and Ujjaini, it's very easy for people to do the long distance trade via these cities. So that's why Taxila and Ujjain were important. And why is Suvarnagiri important? Because it is in present day Karnataka and it has a lot of gold mines, right? So gold is again very, very important for the kingdom. So in order to extract all these gold mines, Suvarnagiri became an important place. Yeah, and communication or trade used to happen via land as well as riverine routes, right? Land transportation, also like sea transportation, like waterways, very, very crucial for the survival of the empire, right? These journeys, like, if you want to travel from one place to another, definitely you needed a certain amount of time to travel. These are not cars or flights. Hardly they travel using like horses or some other like animals, right? They take a lot of time to travel, if not months, at least these journeys took weeks, right? So that's a lot of time. Like, just imagine the logistical reasons as to how are they going to get the food while traveling, right? Not just food for humans who are traveling, but also food for animals, like the fodder, right? How are they going to get it? These are some of the logistical reasons. And that's why it's very, very important to maintain the army. Yeah. So the whole of the slide, this slide talks about that only. Like, how are logistical issues taken care of? So obviously, like while they are moving, and that too for like weeks and weeks together, so many provisions have to be arranged: water, food, shelter, everything, right? So it's obvious that the army was an important means for ensuring the later, especially the protection part. Without the army, the kingdom is not protected, right? So Megasthenes, the same person who we talked about a couple of slides earlier, he mentions in one of like in his book Indica that there are 6 committees which coordinate military activity, like which will look after all of these provisions, right? What are those 6 committees? Number 1 is the Navy Committee, right, which looked after the sea routes, sea trade, sea warfare, like everything water related, Navy, right? Then there was second committee who used to look after these transport and provisions, right? Transport is provisions is nothing but like arranging from animals, right? Like tying tongas to them, like arranging water, arranging food, like making all these camps and shelters whenever needed during every night, right? So all of these were looked after by the second subcommittee. Then the third committee was responsible for foot soldiers, like infantry, right? The fourth was for horses, the fifth was for chariots, and the sixth was for elephants, right? All of these wings were taken care of well by these six subcommittees, which are very, very important, especially when soldiers are traveling from one place to another. Yeah, so that's the administering of the empire. And Ashoka, right, like he believed that if you propagate these Dhamma principles, or if you propagate his ideologies and beliefs, he thought that is one way in which he could consolidate the empire. He could bring the empire together, right? That's what he thought. To a certain extent, he was successful in doing that. Yeah. So he thought that Dhamma is very, very essential. People need to live a good way of life. They should not indulge in all of these robbing, cheating, stealing. Yeah, like all of these bad things people are not supposed to do. In fact, they should lead a very like moral way of life, right? And in order to spread his message, he even appointed special officers called as Dhamma Mahamattas to spread the message of Dhamma. Yeah, so that's what Ashoka did, because he believed in the principles of Dhamma. Okay, so before going forward, Manjusha, Golden Mountain, right? You're basically referring to the Suvarnagiri. Yeah, Suvarna again in Sanskrit terms, or like the Kannada terms, because it's in Karnataka, it means gold. Yeah, Suvarna is gold in Sanskrit or Kannada. Yeah, Giri is like a mountain. So basically indicating that there are a lot of gold mines in Karnataka, and that is exactly why Suvarnagiri became an important place. Yeah. Okay, Ronak is here with us. Hi, Ronak. Okay, he has a question apparently. You can type that down, Ronak. I'll just have a look at it and answer. You type the question. In the meanwhile, I'll go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay, this is the last topic, guys. How important was the empire? Right? Like, we've been talking a lot about it, but like, why is it so important? And like, even if it's important, how important is this? Yeah. So again, right, like reconstruction of his reconstructing early history happened in 19th century. Yeah. So because of the efforts of so many historians and archaeologists, and they finally came to a conclusion that Mauryan Empire is not some ordinary empire, but it's something great. It's a major landmark in the Indian ancient history, right? So they came to that conclusion. Yeah. So at that point of time in the 19th century, India was under the colonial rule, right? Basically, we were under British that time. They were ruling us. And 19th and 20th century Indian historians, yeah, they thought that this Mauryan Empire in early India is both challenging and exciting, because they have never come across such a powerful empire in the past. For the first time, they are talking about Mauryans who were definitely very, very powerful, and they are interesting and exciting to talk about. So that's the consensus which all the historians in 19th and early 20th century shared. Yeah, and some of the archaeological finds associated with the Mauryans, they're also very great. For example, all these stone sculptures and all, right? They're very, very beautiful, like very elegant. Yeah, spectacular products. So that is also one thing. Now, like many of these historians found the message of Ashokan inscriptions very, very different from other rulers. Like there is no other ruler in India who issued all these messages and inscribed all these inscriptions to spread the good message. Nobody did that. It was for the first time that Ashoka did something of this sort. Right? He was so very humble, he was kind, like he looked after the welfare of the people. He looked after his people in the empire as his own children. Right? He's a very totally different figure. Unlike the other kings who are only interested in wealth, money, all these big, huge titles, right? He's not interested in any of these, but instead took care of those people and looked after their welfare, right? So this is a little bit context, right? So because of looking at all of this, it is no wonder that 19th and 20th century historians or nationalist leaders, for example, like Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, like all these national movement heroes we have, like Bhagat Singh and all, they were very, very interested in Mauryan Empire because they looked at Ashoka as some sort of inspiring figure. They have drawn inspiration from Ashoka and they have applied the same thing against the British. Yeah, so just look at this. Where is 19th century? Where is 3rd century BCE? Yeah, all of these national movement fighters, freedom fighters, they have been drawing inspiration from Ashoka. Very amazing, right? Like, so what does this tell us? Like, how important was the Mauryan Empire? We have different answers to this. Yeah, like I might feel it as very important, but you might not agree with me. You might say, no, it's not important. It's just like any other kingdom. You can have your own opinion, right? So nonetheless, there are some demerits of Mauryan kingdom as well. For example, it ruled for 150 years, right? Like there are so many empires in Indian history which ruled for 150 years and even more. So what is special about Mauryan Empire if it only ruled for 150 years? That is one question we can ask. Yeah? And nextly, agreed, like it ruled over so much territory, but it did not encompass the entire subcontinent. All of these northeastern states and South Indian states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, all of these states were never a part of Mauryan Empire. Right? If that is the case, why is it so powerful? Yeah? And even within the frontiers of the empire, control was not uniform, right? Like, as I was saying, if you move away from the center, the importance started decreasing, or like the control started decreasing. So definitely there's no uniformity. Then why should we call it great and powerful? Yeah? And also like it became so weak after Ashoka that it started losing so many of its territories. New chiefdoms and kingdoms started emerging throughout the subcontinent, right? Because there was so much of political instability happening after Ashoka, right? So again, these are also like some limitations or disadvantages of calling it as a powerful empire. The answer is up to you. You can be entitled to have your own opinion, right? It's totally up to you. You can come up with your own justifications as to why do you want to call them a powerful or not a powerful empire, right? So this is some food for thought we have. Just think about the question, right? Because especially if you want to pursue history in the later stages, right? Like after in the bachelor's level or something, these kinds of questions are very, very important. Yeah, you're supposed to have your own opinion. Do you want to call Mauryan Empire a powerful empire or no? It's your own choice. Yeah. So that's all we have for today. But Ronak, that's confidential. It's not supposed to be said out. Yeah, so I can't say that to you. Okay, guys, so that's all we have for today. Any questions, just please put them down, because before the exams, like, we might do another set of revisions, but those revisions will not be as detailed as this, right? So just treat all of these classes from now on as probably your last revisions, right? Because then you'll be able to grasp a little better. Yeah, so do that. And any questions, guys, just please put them in the chat box. I'll quickly answer them, right? Since it's past time, I'll try to wind the session up, but type your questions in the meanwhile, right? So also, like, there is a new humanities batch starting for class 12 students, right? It's basically starting today. It's 1st of November today, right? So it's basically starting today, and it's like something like a crash course which will cover the entirety of your term 1 syllabus. Some sort of revision, right? The duration for this is basically 1.5 months. Yeah, it's extends somewhere till mid-December, till your exams. And the medium of delivery of instruction here is English. So that's not a problem. So again, the teachers who are going to teach you, like, their profiles or bios, all of them are listed here. Have a look at them and feel free to, like, listen to all of these crash courses, because they'll act as some sort of revision, which is very, very helpful. Yeah, so do that, guys. It's starting today. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I highly appreciate your effort, because especially during the revision times, sometimes it might be difficult to, like, attend all the classes. But thanks so much anyways for tuning in. And if you like the content of these videos, as soon as the live stream ends, do like it, share it as much as possible, and also subscribe to the channel Unacademy and scholars in particular. Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks so much for coming. I think I'll see you guys next on Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday, right? So the next class we'll be meeting is Wednesday, which is day after tomorrow, exactly at 6 p.m. Yeah, so I'll see you then, guys. Till then, take care. Okay, so that's it. I don't see any questions in the chat box also, so I'm taking it as everybody is understood whatever is discussed today. If that is the case, then we can wind this up. Guys, the session is like officially over. If you all do not have any doubts, you all are free to leave. Yeah, but I'll just hang around for a couple of seconds in case anybody has questions. Okay, I don't see any, therefore I'm taking it as everybody is understood. Cool, then I'll see you guys again on Wednesday at 6 p.m. to discuss the continuation, or like to do the revision of this chapter for the next sub themes. Yeah, I'll see you guys then, but till then, have a good evening today and also have a good day tomorrow. Yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys. Take care.